For brand new users, again, we want to give them a look or a feel into what we call the Our Writer dashboard. So as we look at our main screen, when you launch Our Writer, this is the screen that comes up. I break this window up into 4 different sections, and you could argue for a 5th, but we're going to stick with 4, starting with, at the top of the screen, the icon here that says History, and then leading over to the right, the last icon that says Post AP. I call this our Service Writer Toolbar. So as a service writer is going to be starting a new interaction with a customer, they're going to be likely using the elements that are up here on this toolbar in order to go ahead and reach out. So if we were to start from the left and work our way to the right, we've got the history icon up there at the top of the screen. So if you wanted to go look for previous work that was performed, estimates or invoices for this customer and or vehicle, we could do that through history. As we're talking about the next 2 icons, WIP and estimates, you'll notice that I've got 2 windows here. One says estimates in progress, one says work in progress. The purpose of these 2 buttons here is to do what I call give focus to these windows. What I mean by that is, if I closed one of these windows here, I could click on the estimates icon and it brings up my estimates in progress window. As we talk a little more about some of the configurable options of these windows, what we'll talk about is that many users will use these windows what I call full screen. So this little icon over here on the right-hand side, which will open up and full screen this window. Now, in order to define which one I'm looking at, I look at my toolbar across the top where it says estimates in progress. That's the window that we're seeing as we're looking at this particular view. When I say the words bring focus or give focus to a window, if I'm using these full screen, which again, in what I'll call real life, is a fairly common way to use them. It gives us the most visibility in terms of the number of estimates or repair orders on screen at any given point in time. If I click on the WIP button, now my work in progress window is now in focus or comes to the forefront. When I click on the estimates icon, then again, we flip one versus the other. In my case, I've got them one on top of another, just so as I talk about my 4 different sections, makes it easier to see and or talk to the different windows that are there. As we move over, we can either start a new repair order or a new estimate. As we talk about a bit of configuration with this window, we'll see where we can modify whether we're starting new estimates, new ROs, parts estimates, or parts invoices. So being able to add or remove icons from that top toolbar as we go across. The Express Estimate button that existed on 131 or up until Gen 1 on 131 is now called a phone quote. Same exact functionality, but if I wanted to start a ticket without having to put in customer and vehicle information, just start capturing notes, comments, or inspection items, we'd start a phone quote as opposed to a new estimate or new repair order. If I wanted to search inventory, Quick Parts is my way to do that. Just go ahead and bring up the Quick Parts section and search anything in my master inventory. Find pricing, find availability, make modifications. So that's my quick link into inventory direct from my main screen. The calculator is just a rudimentary calculator. I can do addition, subtraction, division, multiplication. So if I don't want to have to get a piece of paper or have a calculator sitting there next to my keyboard, I can use the calculator that's embedded inside of our writer. The scheduler is our tool for tracking appointments and also managing workflow. We've got a whole series of webinars that we do around the scheduler, but here, at least from the point of sale module, would be where we'd enter into that scheduler module, like I said, most commonly to create new appointments for customers as we go through. The notes icon allows me to keep track of notes, specify a day that they belong to, make sure that it lights up so that my guys can see that there are notes associated with a particular day, not necessarily a customer or a vehicle, but just general notes for the shop itself. And the last icon over there, again, an optional icon, but if you're using accounts payable, or what we commonly abbreviate as AP, this would be a way we could launch in and go ahead and post an accounts payable transaction. Maybe some parts arrived from an outside vendor, we bought something for shop supplies, and we want to record those transactions. We'll do that through our post AP icon. So the first section, as I break up this window, is the one across the top where it says history, then over to post AP. And again, I call that our service writer toolbar. Down the left-hand side, we've got what's called our quick launch toolbar. And in my case, I've got it broken up into 3 separate sections. Starting up at the top, The very first icon or menu says repair. As we're looking at the different integrations that are available through our writer, we'll look at catalog integrations and then also repair integrations. So if I'm looking for diagnostic and or repair information, we could use the icons in the upper left-hand corner. The two common ones, are the ones that have been there for a while, are integrations to ALLDATA and or to Identifix. So if I'm looking for diagnostic and repair information or any other information that might be available through either of those two entities, we can link out to those directly through our writer. There's a third one I can throw up there in the repair section with Gen 2, and really it's the most recent iterations of Gen 2. We're on 2.1.63, introduces an integration to the MotoLogic diagnostic and repair catalog as well. So again, whichever of the three that I'm using, I can have it integrated into our writer so I can pass information through, not have to re-enter year, make, model, engine as we go along. We've got repair, and then the second section on that quick launch toolbar says catalogs. If you look at that catalog section, I've got a half a dozen icons that are turned on. They're some of the more commonly used ones that we see out in our user base. However, you can have as many as 13 or 14 different icons turned on that left-hand side. The concept of our writer, at least as we started looking at electronic connectivity, when that first started becoming prevalent back in the early to mid 2000s, was we thought about trying to become a resource or a repository for cataloging information, and we realized very quickly that the number of companies that were out there in the aftermarket that were already doing just that would be, was a fairly large number. And so for us to try to enter into that space wasn't in our best interest. What we decided to do, and have continued to do, is to be at the forefront of connectivity by allowing our users to decide how they would like to connect and to whom they would like to connect. So the first icon says Smart eCat, and then the two directly beneath that both reference the Epicor catalog. Our primary cataloging option, especially for shops that are doing what we call general repair, is using the Epicor catalog and what we call Smart eCat, which allows us to go ahead and reach out to vendors to check pricing, availability, and order parts directly through our writer or from a estimate or work in progress ticket without having to venture out into vendors' websites. So again, this is the most integrated of our solutions through both what we call Smart eCat and or the Epicor catalog. Beneath that, we've got an integration to WorldPack, especially for shops that are doing a lot of either high-end or foreign car. If you're doing a lot of Mercedes, BMW, Audi, you're probably using WorldPack as one of your primary vendors, and WorldPack has their speed dial catalog interface. This is our connection to speed dial. So for anybody that's a heavy WorldPack user, this is likely how they're adding parts onto a ticket and then also ordering those parts without having to launch out directly into the WorldPack catalog. So again, integrated directly into our transaction. As we continue down, we've got our Napa ProLink integration for somebody that's a Napa heavy user. They're probably using the ProLink website as a resource for not only parts, but also pricing and availability. And this is our link so that we can do that directly from inside of a transaction as we go along. Also new with Gen 2, so it merits conversation here, is an integration to IMC. So a punch out directly to the IMC catalog, so that if you're using IMC prevalently as a parts vendor, there's a way we can connect to those folks as well. Now, I said there's about a half a dozen, maybe a couple more other integrations down that left-hand side that we can include. Again, what we've always tried to do from an RWriter perspective is to give our end users the options. So use which ones are applicable to your business, and we'll turn those icons on or off. And as we get into our conversation about configuring the dashboard in our subsequent webinar a little bit later today, we'll talk about how we turn it on and off those icons, how we select from that list which ones are applicable in our case. Last section in that quick launch toolbar on the left-hand side is actually called Quick Launch. And in this case, these are other modules of the RWriter shop management system, meaning the first two sections, repair and catalogs, are dependent on third parties, meaning we're integrating with an ALLDATA or an Identifix or an Epicor or WorldPack. And again, so there is a partner, if you will, that we're working with for that information. The sections down under Quick Launch, or the icons down there, are all part of the RWriter shop management system. So whether we're quoting tires or we're ordering parts from a vendor with Smart Order, and or as we scroll down or continue down, reporting inventory, payables, receivables, and or the marketing and follow-up modules, all other aspects of the OurWriter shop management system. As we continue with our series of webinars through 2018, we're going to explore each of those individually in a number of different webinars. We've also got some that we've done historically out hosted on our YouTube page. You're more than welcome to look at and or view those as well. So section 2 down that left-hand side is what we call our quick launch toolbar. In the center, in 2 windows that I've already alluded to or referenced a little bit, are our estimates in progress and our work in progress windows. For the users that are brand new to OurWriter, it merits taking just a moment to talk about the difference between the two and or the concept of how they work inside of OurWriter. In OurWriter, a ticket can go through 3 separate stages in its life cycle, meaning the idea is when the customer first walks through the door, we're going to start an estimate for that customer. And the customer is going to give us their information, customer and vehicle, as well as we'll capture their comments as to why they've come into the shop that day. Why is the vehicle in need of service? And then once we've captured their comments, we'll likely add on some diagnostic items to try to figure out exactly what's wrong with that particular vehicle. So we're going to do all that while we're building an estimate. Our technicians come back and give us the good news on what's needed to be done in order to fix that vehicle. Then we build the customer an estimate and then go back with a price. Here's what's needed to be done. Here's how long it's going to take, as well as here's how much it's going to cost. So all of that being done while the ticket is still in an estimate stage. Once we've gotten the approval from the customer to do the work, we can convert it from an estimate to what's called a work in progress. So step 1 is an estimate. Step 2 is a work in progress transaction. Again, our work in progress window intended to be a listing of all the vehicles that are currently being worked on. Now, in some cases, it may be a job that we've sold and we haven't started the work yet. It may be a job that we've finished, but the customer hasn't come to pick it up. However, it's our current book of business that lives in our work in progress window. So there were 3 separate stages in a ticket's life cycle. Once the customer comes to pick up the vehicle and we finalize the transaction, it then becomes an invoice. So again, on our screen, we see the estimates and the work in progress, the relevant items that are currently potentially being worked on today. The invoices get finalized and end up in history in the upper left-hand corner. And again, we'll talk more about history in a subsequent webinar. So again, 2 windows in the center, estimates in progress and then work in progress. Again, we see those sitting there. Now I had, as we started out, talked about the way that we could full screen these, bring focus, as I was going through our icons to the upper left-hand corner. Again, all elements of the webinar that we're going to talk about, where we talk about some of the configurable options as far as this particular screen are concerned. As we started out this morning's webinar, I said that there were 4, or although you could make an argument for 5 different sections of this particular screen. If you look up to the very far upper left-hand corner, there's a section or there's another set of menus that live up here across the top, starting with the one that says File. If I clicked on File, what you're going to find is most of the options that live underneath File are just duplicates, or there's redundancy between what's in my icons across here on the top. The second menu over says Quick Functions. And this one, again, very similar. There's our quick parts, our calculator, our notes, and our post AP. But you'll notice then we start to get into some newer and or icons that don't have a home on our main dashboard. In this case, if I'm using the time clock, well, then there's a link in or a way we can get to the time clock inside of OurWriter, and then also what we call our daily summary. So if I just wanted a quick report that tells me how many invoices we have in versus how many in our work in progress. So again, underneath that quick functions, there are a couple of new and or menu items that is the only place where we can get to those. So again, down towards the bottom. If you continued over to where it says Windows, again, the Windows is really talking more about these screens as we look at them, give us some of the different options as we see. And again, we'll talk more about configuring these screens a bit later on, in a subsequent webinar as we go along. And the last one over there says Help. And in just about every module of OurWriter, you will find the Help menu. And if you were to click on Help and then Help underneath, or if you hit F1 there on the right-hand side, what that's going to do is it's going to take you out to our help page, meaning if I was to click on this one here, it takes you to a website that's called docs.rowriter.com. And we encourage you to go to the website from inside of the program. If no reason, then because what it will do is it will understand the version of our writer that you're running, and it will take you to the page most appropriate or applicable for that version. So in our case, again, we're running what I called Gen 2 of our writer. So it's launching me out, and as it brings up my docs.ourwriter.com site, what you're going to notice is in that URL embedded is version 2.1. I had said we're running 2.1.63. So again, it's bringing me to the pages that are relevant or written specifically in regards to the version that I'm running. So again, from inside of any module of our writer, you could go ahead and you can bring up the help menu. And then in there, you could go ahead and you can search through the listings or search through the indexes to go ahead and find what information may be relevant at this particular moment. So again, as we talk about the different sections of our dashboard, as we introduce our writer, again, the service writer toolbar across the top, which we're going to use again as we start new customer interactions, or we're searching inventory or posting accounts payable, among other things. Our quick launch toolbar down the left-hand side, which we'll use to access our repair and diagnostic guides, our catalogs for parts and or labor times, and then other modules of the Our Writer Shop management system. And our two windows in the center for our estimates in progress and our work in progress, where we're going to see, well, what transactions are relevant at the current moment. So what can we see? What are we working on as we go through? And then last but not least, again, those menus across the top section, or the fifth different section of this particular window as we go through. So that brings me to the end of my conversation as it relates to just an introduction into the Our Writer dashboard.